So in this shiur this afternoon, we're going to take a short break from the saga we've been going through on the Tzeva Brain, although I'm sure everybody is dying to hear the final installment. But we're going to focus now on a very relatively relevant shaila that came up here and across the area in the last few days, which is also related to what we're learning in the afternoon here in Kolel. So, this past Shabbos, as we all noticed, was a snowstorm. Now they say about Rav Shlomo Yosef Zevin that if you look in his sefer Le'er HaHalacha, there's an essay, halachic. So if you look in the Mavai, in the introduction by his family to the new edition of his other sefer, Ishim Meshitis, so describing his encyclopedic knowledge. Of course, he was involved in starting the Encyclopedia Talmudis, but they're trying to make the case that it wasn't just a work, that as a person, he was a living encyclopedia. On any topic you asked him about, he could launch into an essay. So as an example, they say that one of the people who used to attend the Shiurim, someone who went on later to be a senior judge in the Israeli judicial system. So he says, that article, Hashelag in Le'er HaHalacha, where did that article come from? How did it come to be? He says it was a Wednesday, and it snowed in Yerushalayim, and apparently, as we know, it doesn't snow that often in Yerushalayim. When it does, they get very excited, paralyzes everything. So the Chavra preferred to look at the snow than to listen to a shiur. So they made a deal with him. They said, we'll only come to shiur if you talk about the snow. He said, fine. So on the spot, that's when he came up with this whole shiur. He was just able to pull it out of his head on a whim, to be able to give an overview of Shelag and Halacha. And then they heard later from the editor of Hatzofeh, where his articles used to appear first before they were collected in his books, that by that afternoon he had already written up the whole shiur, the whole article, and submitted it for that week's paper. So recently they were talking about Rav Zusha Willem Olav Shalom, who passed away, and one of the shvachim they said was also that it snowed once. I guess it was a serious snowstorm, and maybe it was only half seder. And the Viter also, he launched into a shiur on the topic of snow, and takes a certain type of person, certain type of idea. So we're not going to get into snow for the sake of snow. Hayos, we're learning Hilchos Shabbos, so as the snow was falling on Shabbos, you're walking around, so at least I had the question, Taka, what is the halacha? Is it possible to clear the snow that falls on Shabbos to get a guy? Sometimes you have goyim going door to door. I don't know if and how often that happens, but certainly in heavier snowstorms you might have that. Can you, can you arrange it in advance? And if you pay attention to this question, you look around Crown Heights, just starting with our neighborhood, you might notice actually that certain buildings, certain places, it looks like there is some shoveling going on even on Shabbos. Although it would seem like 95% or so of the streets were not cleared. So what's taka the halacha? What's taka the din? Can you have someone clear the snow in the street? Obviously, it's somewhat of a hazard. So if you just learn through these simanim, through these halachas generally, you would probably get the impression that it's probably not okay, even if you look in some of the svarim written today. But as I was going through the svarim on Shabbos that might be related to the topic, so among others, I opened the Shmir Shabbos Kol Chasa, which of course is one of the most influential svarim and halacha in our day. So if you look in the new edition, I didn't go to check and compare the old edition, but in the new edition, Perek Chavhei, Shmiras Haguf, Bebayis U'Michutzula, Yanois Yud Aleph, it says as follows: Leis HaTzoyrech, Mutter Lefanes Shelag, and in the Hara, they assert that it's not mukta, which is its own discussion. You're allowed to clear the snow, min harachoyv, from the street, al manas lemnoya hachlokas ha'ovrim v'shavim sham, to prevent people from slipping. V'hu sheharachoyv lo yehei reshus harabim gemura, as long as it's not a total reshus harabim, as long as it's a carmelist, like most cities we assume. and assuming that we're dealing with a paved road. So you're not doing anything to the earth itself. So at this point, it's already mashma that even a yid, it's not talking about, it says mutter, a yid can go into the street in a regular neighborhood without a native. We're not going to get into the controversy over different neighborhoods in Carmelis. We're just going to assume for the sake of the shiur that neighborhoods in Brooklyn as well are Carmelis. So according to this, a yid could mamash go out and start cleaning and shoveling the snow like normal. Yeah, if possible, it should be done by a guy. And in the footnote it says, because if a yid does it, there's a shtickle zilzol of Shabbos. You're shoveling snow, you're doing work on Shabbos. And if you're using a guy, in fact, if it's a guy, you can even do it in a full-fledged Rishus Harabim. And in the Or it says, Ayin Shut Mishnah Halachas Chelek Dalet Sibim Memhei. After seeing this, I reminded myself that I remember that Rabbi Brian also addressed the topic of snow on Shabbos, b'chlal, different aspects of snow on Shabbos, in his series Halachic to go back around 2015 or so. So if I looked it up, if you find there on the website, number 233, so he writes there, La Halacha, I'll quote the relevant part, if there is snow on the sidewalk in front of our house and it poses a danger of slipping, chas v'shalom, in a place where there is no eruv, although we may not remove the snow ourselves, we may have a non-Jew remove it in order to prevent people from falling, chas v'shalom. You look in the Mar Mekaymis, our lengthy Mar Mekaymis there, Kedarkai, you look, so on that last point, Validei Goy, hyphen, Shut, Mishnah Halachas Chelek Dalet Sibim Memhei, so he's being mitzayin to the same makar, so it sounds like Mishnah Halachas for Menashe Klein seems to be the makar of this din, of this discussion. I already spoke about him a bit last year, and I mentioned how growing up I actually lived near a shul, I used to see him a lot. Menashe Klein is an interesting gather, where on the one hand, he's probably a bit short of the top tier of Paiskim, Shalos and Shuvas from that generation, of our generation. And sometimes he's a bit unique and alone in some of his opinions and his shittas. But on the other hand, I would say that he's still up there in the list of Shalos and Shuvas that are a brand name. You write a list of Shalos and Shuvas that people recognize, Yigos Moshe, Tzitz Eliezer, Shevet HaLevi. Mishnah Halachas is also fairly up there. And l'chayra, after he and the rest passed away, l'chayra, we don't have that phenomenon in this dar. People alive today, there is no Shalos and Shuvas that has risen to that level. That's a classic set of Shalos and Shuvas. In any case, we see that in this case, Shmir Shabbos Kol Chasa, the Sif seems to be based primarily on his psak. So in this case, it seems to have been accepted. So let's take a look and see. I would like to take a look at the Mishnah Halachas now, Taka, and see how he came to this psak. So if you look there in Chelek Dalet Sibim Memhei, there's no date on the tshuva, but the volume Chelek Dalet was printed first in Tafshin Chavtes, and the other tshuvas there are also from the 60s, so it's from around then. And it's addressed to Yedidi Rav Chavivi, Maharash Turk, the old New York accent, Turk with a Vav Yud, Rav Kingsbridge Jewish Center, Bronx. So you look him up, Rabbi Samuel Turk, passed away in 2009, was born in America, went through the yeshivas here, and he was, for 40 years, he was the Rav of Kingsbridge Center of Israel in Riverdale, for those interested. He also had a column in the Jewish Press for many years. So the tshuva is addressed to him. And the shaila was, are you allowed to clean the snow in front of the house on the sidewalk, Balaz, he writes, through a guy, shesachru b'kablanas b'Shabbos v'yamtiv. Let's assume you're trying to do it right, you're going to arrange some kind of kablanas. So the first question is, there's a din in simulation from Dalet about garbage. Magen Avram, Alter Rebbe. Can we compare this question to that? So he writes, this Rabbi Turk already was mefalpel a bit based on this Magen Avram and simulation from Dalet of Katan Ches. Magen Avram writes that where he lived, there's already nagu heter to hire a guy b'kablanos to take garbage, to collect the garbage from the streets, and they did the malacha on Shabbos. The Magen Avram writes, Afal gav the malacha deiraisahu. Why is it Melacha D'Oraisa? So he quotes, because it says in Gemara, if you have a pile like Avshushis, and then you take it away, it's Baina, being Matakin Harachayiv. Why are they doing this? Tzarech Leimar, the Gadol Echad, Hayrelem Kach, there must have been a Gadol who told them to do this. Why? The Bishel Rabim, when you have tzedakah out in the open on that scale, so there's no chshad. Ultimately, the issue here is chshad. The guy can do whatever he wants to do. The issue would be chshad, so the Bishel Rabim, someone paskin that it's fine. But b'schir yaim, pshita da'asr. And Rabbi even adds, and when there's no minhag like this, you should also not be mekel. If there's a minhag, then it's fine. If you look in the Alter Rebbe brings a variation of this as well in Sivches. B'k'tas mekayim negen heter, she'akol soichrim nachrim b'kablanos. It's clearly the kohol. They hire the guy in b'kablanos to clean the garbage, and he does it on his own, even on Shabbos. We're not chayshish l'maris ayin. They are not chayshish. V'yesh lamdu aleim schos. If he shekvar nasparsim hadover, it's already famous. Shedarech lisker nachrim b'kablanos to clean the garbage. It's not a schir yoyim, so there's no chayshish maris ayin. He also concludes, so if you compare this to that, in this case, surely not b'kablanos. The kohol, there's no kohol hiring any snow removal. Everyone's hiring your own guy, and you're paying him by the hour, or whatever it is. So it seems pretty usher. That he says, but even Rabbi Turk, doesn't say what Rabbi Turk said, but he was being mitzaded for a heter because it's very important. Nachutz moed. So Rav Menashe Klein says, if you compare this to the Magen Avraham, it would be hard to find a heter because it's a Melacha D'Oraisa if we assume that it's the same kind of Melacha D'Oraisa as the garbage there. And we don't find the musig of being mater Melacha D'Oraisa even by a guy without the kablanos and avoiding the chshad and all that, just because of hefsed mammon. Right? Because one of the issues here is that there's a law in New York City that you have to clean your snow in front of your property within a certain amount of time. If you don't, they fine you. As we'll see, this is an important part of this discussion. That's part of what's driving this discussion. I didn't do that much research to see how the law today compares, and a lot comes down to also how much they crack down. Especially if it falls on Shabbos and it's known that the Jewish community is probably not active on Shabbos. I haven't heard that it's a major pressing issue, but the way he's describing them, and maybe back then they used to crack down more and it was a more urgent issue. So just because of hefsed mammon, they're going to get a ticket, that would not be enough of a reason to just start being matter things that are otherwise asr. Although it's not fully clear, he says. But Lafini is daiti. Let's start by establishing that what the Magen Avraham said is not relevant to our din. Because the Magen Avraham said that cleaning the garbage is a Melacha D'Oraisa. Why? He alluded to the Gemara of the Gavshushis. That if you take the Gavshushis away in your home, in the city, it's Baina. You fix the earth. And Basada, it's Chaydesh. Right, the Gemara says house, we're comparing the street to the house. But that's all a gavshushis, pile of dirt, or zevel, pile of garbage, similar to a pile of dirt. But we have to start by establishing that clearing away snow, you can't compare snow to a pile of dirt, it's not baina. Why? Because snow melts on its own. And he's mitzayin to Gemara Bava Basra, Hasheleg va'abarad va'aglid va'akfer va'hamayim kulon ein mematin b'chaloyin. There it's talking about tumah, peseach, tefach, putting things in the window. Is it memayit from the window, is it not? So all those things, water-based elements are not memayit, Rashi says, because they melt on their own. So Menashe Klein says, Pashut, that for the same reason, it shouldn't be baina either. If it's doesn't count as being present in the window, then it shouldn't be, its presence or lack of presence moving around shouldn't have an impact on din baina, on the earth. So it's time also to a Gemara Nida, which talks about the Nyanim of Shalag. And Avada, he says, if you cleared it from your field, it also wouldn't be chaydesh. It goes for both halachas. There's Mitzayin to Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Chaf, Sif Tes, halachas of snow on Shabbos. It says you don't have to smash the snow, but you can put it in a cup to melt. Sif Yud there it says you're allowed to break ice, etc. There's a Mishnah in Taurus that Shelag is not Oichel, it's not Mashka. If you had in mind that it's Oichel, but Ladaita, if you had in mind that it's Mashka, we treat it like Mashka. So it has its own completely different gather on Shabbos. Can't compare it to earth and garbage. So Pashut, he says that you can't compare it to Zevel B'chotzer or B'rechoiv. That has a shtickle din mechuber, you're being mash v'gumois. Shelag is not relevant to all of that. So it seems like we've successfully managed to disconnect this question, this discussion, from the sugya of the Zevel and Eshram Dalet. Of course, cleaning garbage is its own discussion. Of course, here in nowadays we put the garbage out before Shabbos and we allow the city's sanitation department to pick it up. That's its own discussion. So what would the problem be? What would the problem be here? The problem is going to end up being something to do with doing things in the Rosh Hashanah, Dalet Amos. So he says, first of all, number one, we have to figure out, is there an Issa D'Oraisa here involved or not? Let's say Yid himself was cleaning the snow with his hands, with his body. Would he be over an Issa D'Oraisa or not? He says, L'chayre, it's not an Issa D'Oraisa, as long as you weren't Maver Dalet Amos B'Rosh Hashanah. If you're Maver Dalet Amos, then maybe it's not a problem. Although he says if you didn't pick it up with your hands, or you didn't move a Dalet Amos, even if you did pick it up with your hands, then it would only be an Issa D'Rabbanan. And maybe not even that, he says, because if you take something less than Dalet Amos Rosh Hashanah, we don't apply the usual rule of Chatzi Shir. There's no Chatzi Shir by Tchumen and Dalet Amos, which is its own discussion. But at any rate, he says, if you were a Yid and you had snow, if you were trying to avoid an Issa D'Oraisa, so you would start by being Mavrit, Pachas Medal Amos. That would be the first thing you would do to make sure you're not being over an Issa D'Oraisa. So second of all, he throws this in, just briefly, we should treat this like a malacha, she'en tzricha lagufa. You don't need the snow here, you're just trying to get it out of your way. And that's its own sugya, Rashi, Tosfos, Rambam. But he says, Reiv Pesachim would say it's Taka D'Rabbanan. Now, is this B'chal Rosh Hashanah or not? He says, if you say that it's not a Rosh Hashanah, then there's certainly no Malacha D'Oraisa in the first place. There's nothing to talk about. But even if it is, even if you want to treat New York City like Rosh Hashanah, well, I just told you, we can be Maver Pachas Medal Amos. Then he says, another point, that usually, how do you shovel snow? I mean, people have different techniques, styles, but the way he describes it is you're shoving the snow, you're pushing it, you're shoving it, you're not picking it up, he says. If you never picked it up, then there's no akira and there's no hanacha. So it's not Maver Dalet Amos. He starts being mitzayin to the different sugyas. Hagoyin of kiss b'Shabbos, or you're just dragging it on the ground. In Ksubis, Lema Hagbot, Tzayda Chaitzah, picking it up as part of the Chaitzah. Gemara Shabbos, Hever Chatzi Gregoris, Lav Dara Chaitzah Bekach, Lav Chaitzahu. So l'chayre, if you do it in this manner, you're also not doing a kinyan halacha, you're also not being Maver Dalet Amos. So now switching to the Metzias, which is, you probably want to get a guy to do this. So Abazai, based on all of this, l'chayre, you could speak to the guy and make a deal with him, make a tanai and say, please be careful when you clean the snow, not to move things more than Dalet Amos at a time. Try. And if you are going to move it more than Dalet Amos, at least, be makbid on Pachas Dalet Amos. Teach him how to be Nizir and Hilchas, Hilchas Eitzah. Then Abazai, there's no Chashash Ma'aver B'Daraisa. What are the chances? Is the guy going to follow your instructions? Is he lav dafka? But once he disobeys you, that's his own decision. You don't have to be chayshish to his decision. You told him how to do it in the right way, in the correct way. We have no tzivoy to stop a guy from doing malacha and the Rosh Hashanah, whatever he's doing, he's doing. You're going to ask, how did the shovel get here? We took care of the snow. You had to bring a shovel from somewhere. You brought it at least even if he brings his own. He says it's also not a problem. The guy brought the shovel for himself. You're a Yid, you're hiring him. You don't care if he has a shovel. You want to get down on your hands and knees and start burrowing in the snow with your hands. That's fine. That's not for me, it's for you. And we already established that once he's shoveling, there's no need for there to be dalet amas. You can drag it. Even if you pick it up, you put it down within dalet amas, ruba to ruba. And you can make this tonight with him. So he's satisfied with that point. So we've gotten away from saying that it's an Isser D'Oraisa, in his view. Okay, no, you still can't, you still have to, it's still an Isser D'Rabbanan. Why? What's the heter? So here's where we come to the heter of the koitz from Siman Shin Ches. He says, once we've established there's no Isser D'Oraisa here, so now he says, I think it's pashut you could tell a guy to clean the snow, because in Erech Chaim Siman Shin Ches, Sif Yud Ches, it says if you have a thorn in the Rosh Hashanah, you're allowed to take it pachas medal aramis. That's in Rosh Hashanah. If it's a Carmelist, you're allowed to pick it up and take it away. The chashina and shema yaziku by rabim, u'b'makim hazeket rabim legazru rabbanon shvus. There's a shvus, but the whole shvus doesn't apply where there's a hazeket rabim. You look in Alter Rebbe there also in Sif Mem Tes. Alter Rebbe restates it. Kaitz hamunach b'Rosh Hashanah mutal taltalei pachas medal aramis ad shisalkenu letzider Rosh Hashanah. On a Carmelist metaltalei kedarkoi afilu harbe ba'akira achas v'pnei sheyesh lachosh shema yaziku barabim u'b'makim hazeket rabim legazru al shvus. Tiltal dal aramis bekarmelis, or pachas medal aramis Rosh Hashanah betiltal muktzeh. So all of these isurim derabanan get suspended. B'makim hazek derabim. The Gemakar is in the Gemara Shabbos, and he says b'chlal is machlekes rishonim. The Ran argues that according to the Bahag, could even be matur yisurim deiraisa. He has a whole mahalach to explain why muzagin that the Bahag holds that. Fine, the Rav rishonim hold not a deiraisa, only a shvus, which is the way the Shulchan Aruch and Alter Rebbe said it. He says, Loi mebai according to the Bahag. So surely has a derabim, no problem. But, so if even if a yid could do it, so avad you could tell a guy. And if you don't have a guy, a yid could do it. Why not? But even according to the Paiskim that say they're only matzah shvus, so we just explained at length why snow removal is only a shvus, not a deraisa. So if there's only a shvus, so if we argue that this is also a hezek derabim like a kites, so you would be allowed to do it b'pachas medal aramis, even for a yid. Afilu li yisrael b'dalek a guy mishum hazek derabim, and kol shekain. If you do have a guy, there would be no iser.
Pachas medal aramis, you could do it.
We said kites. We said pachas medal aramis for the Rosh Hashanah. We suspend that in Rosh Hashanah and tiltal b'chlal on a karmelis. This discussion is, until now, has been going with both assumptions. Even if you say that New York City is Rosh Hashanah, that's why he had the whole hemshech about pachas medal aramis. The question is, how broad is this din of kites? How far? What can we apply it to? Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it just says kites. So he says, if you look at the Magen Avraham, he quotes a Rivash, a Shuv of the Rivash, that says, no, it's tafka only the things we see in Chazal, a kites, a gachelas shalmatches, something that you might not see. That's why there's a danger. People might not see it and they'll get hurt. But anything you could see easily, the Rivash says, is not mutter. In fact, there's a Beferish Rabbeinu Chananel who says this in Shabbos as well. The Magen Avraham asks on the Rivash, the Magen Avraham says, we see there's another din, a shvud shel eitz, for roasting or whatever, you're also allowed to carry it, shlei yaziku bay, siman tavkuf yud ches, elchas yamtif. The Magen Avraham says from here, it seems like even if it is nikir le'inayim, anything. Even the Magen Avraham says, Evan Gedoyla, a large stone, a large rock, that would be awesome. Magen Avraham also makes another point. Magen Avraham says that it could only be something that was not there in Erev Shabbos, because if it was already there in Erev Shabbos, you should have taken it away in Erev Shabbos. If this wasn't the case, then you should be able to clear stones away on Shabbos. That's clearly not okay. So the stones were there yesterday, that's why, but something that doesn't belong here, a kites, a gachelas, even a shvut shalates, according to Magen Avraham, if it appears there on Shabbos, you're allowed to get rid of it. Now, if you look at the Alter Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe does not get into this shaklavataria of the Magen Avraham, sort of just restates the Shulchan Aruch the way the Shulchan Aruch said it, a kites, without getting into these gedarim. If you look at the El Rebbe says, he has a kash in the Magen Avraham, that Magen Avraham overlooked the Ran. I don't know if it's a kasher, just that there's other Rishonim that also speak about this that the Ran didn't mention. When it comes to the Rivash is machmer. The Rivash is saying essentially, according to Rivash, it sounds like we would have a problem here, because he mamish limits it only to kites. Magen Avraham is being a little more expansive. So he says there are other achreinim that ask on the Rivash that l'chayr it's enough in a Gemara aminiach esakad b'reshus harabim.
What happened with the Ran?
Stam. No, it just says this. It seems like from the Ran also that you could be matter. Whatever. But achreinim ask, you see that aminiach esakad b'reshus harabim chayshemish b'tzimin tav beis. That if you leave something in the street and people trip on it, you're chayev. You could say, why? Look where you're going. Why did you look? Why did you just walk into my object that I left in the middle of the street? So what's even Kinderlach and Cheder learn this? We say the ein derech b'nei adam lesboinem bedrachim. The gabe helchas nazek. We say people don't look where they're going. It's probably more true today than ever. So achreinim are asking this on the Rivash. So Dr. Benashe Klein, that they're asking like it's their own kasha. They all miss the Tashbates. The Tashbates is pretty close in time to the Rivash, and the Tashbates in the Chelek Aleph Siman Kuf Lamed Zayin, he says Re'isi tshuva achas migadol hadar. That says only a gachela shamatachas. L'chayr is referring to the Rivash, and everything else you can't take away on Shabbos because bnei adam einayim lehem lidus. People should see where they're going. And the Tashbet says, "Vein daiti." Can I disagree? Because we say in Hamaniach that people don't look where they're going. That's where you're chayiv ben azaken, and that's the psak of the rif. So if we're being mitzi mamain because people don't look where they're going, kol shekain a shvus should be nitcha on Shabbos. So we have this Tashbet. So the Tashbet is mamash shleidach gisa of the Rivash. The Tashbet seems to be saying even the most visible obstacles, just like your chayiv nezek b'chlal, you should be mutter to get rid of it on Shabbos. So back to the snow. If we're arguing that snow is a hezek derabim, so according to the Magen Avraham, even the Magen Avraham already holds that if it's noticeable, he also disagrees with the Rivash. And certainly according to the Tashbets, so weiter, not only could you tell a guy, but you'd even be able to do it yourself if there isn't a guy if it was a Reshus Harabim to carry it b'teich dal aramas. Then there's the other question of, does the snow have to fall only on Shabbos? Can it fall before Shabbos? According to the Magen Avraham, dafka on Shabbos. Other achreinim say it could even be before Shabbos. And then he says, even the Rivash seemed to be the one who said, no, mamish, only a kaitz and a gachelas. He says, could be, what was the Rivash's vart? Usually, you have one kaitz, the rest of the street is fine. There's one kaitz in one spot, and the Rivash is saying that for other things that you can see, walk around it, go somewhere else. Right? That's Rivash's argument. You could see where you're going. So you could see where you're going and go somewhere else. But with snow doesn't fall in one spot in front of your house. Snow falls on the entire street. So here, the whole time of a Naim Lam, they know where they're going, it doesn't help you. The snow is everywhere. Fine, I see it. And now what do? I still can't walk over the snow without risking a bad fall. So that whole argument is not relevant here. So even the Rivash would be made that, even though it's nicker, but this is the only way to solve the problem. There is no other way to solve the problem. You can't walk around it. And he says, at the very least, the Rivash would be made that if you kicked it with your feet a little bit to the side, but even the Rivash would be made at the very least that it's mutter if there's no guy. Then he raises the question, he says, a bit of a question talk of how damaging, how threatening is a particular hezek. We need a bit of a gather here, right? So the Rivash has a very strict gather. Anything you can't see is dangerous. But if it's visible, then the onus is on people, it's on them. They have to make sure they know where they're going. If you look at the Tashbetz though, the Tashbetz holds the opposite. So the shaila he was asked about was about a lamp. A lamp went out, and for some reason this lamp it's in the way. People might get damaged by the lamp. That was the shaila. And he says you're allowed to take it without doing any shtick before Shabbos with muktzah and all of that because of this din of sakana. Right? So the Tashbetz is saying it's a very broad definition. Anything that seems mildly problematic, mildly threatening, a lamp, So according to the Tashbitz, it seems that anything that could pose a damage, it's visible, it's not visible, it's always a hezek, and there's no problem of a shvus here. So the snow would also be a hezek l'rabim. Says if you look at the Mishnah Brura, Taka writes, Le yatiru ela be'evan cotton she'ein nidalei. The Aruch HaShulchan says, Ein lameidim mikoitz l'shar dvarim. You see that the Mishnah Brura and the Aruch HaShulchan were going in the direction of the Rivash. They were trying to be mitzamtzim this din. They didn't want it to become a free-for-all. Everyone's going to walk around in the street on Shabbos and start picking things up. But he says it's a pella mitashbitz. A lot of Achreinim didn't seem to have the tashbitz, or they missed it. Then he's a mitzayin to interesting sefer. He says, look in Shut B'Samim Rosh, Simon Tzaddik. So for those not familiar, B'Samim Rosh was ostensibly new tshuvas of the Rosh. They were printed in the tough kufs by a certain Reb Shol Berlin, but very soon afterwards there were accusations that Reb Shol Berlin was a shtickle maskel, an early maskel, and the allegation was that there was no ksav yad, there were no tshuvas of the Rosh. He made the tshuvas up himself. Each tshuva is then followed by his commentary. And they said he wrote the tshuvas, he wrote the commentary, and some of those tshuvas seem to have certain agendas. He's almost like planting certain ideas that he felt the halachic world needed to have, so he put it in there. One of the famous ones, Dafka, is about suicide. Very early tshuva that's more open-minded towards people who commit suicide out of desperation. Anyways, he quotes the B'Samim Reish here without comment. And B'Samim Reish, Simon Tzaddik, there's a line there. U'mechaben b'reshus harabim gachela shel eitz lefi shemesirin kol hanazakim beduchta d'shchichi rabim kol she'em malacha deraisa. Okay, so if you count the B'Samim Reish as a makar, so he seems to phrase it as kol hanazakim. And then Rashi Klein says, B'frat, here we have a chayk hamadina. He's bringing the law. Now, Menashe Klein's general attitude towards laws, I'm not sure was always, I don't think he was that into following every law. But here Dafki wants to argue, why is the law the law? Why is there a law you have to clean your snow in front of your property? Because it's a danger, because it's a hazard. Otherwise there wouldn't be a law. Everyone knows that people slip and fall, and it's therefore your responsibility to prevent people from slipping and falling on your property or the sidewalk in front of your property. No, so it's a davar pashut. Everyone, it's not like we came here and made up a new chash of hezek. That's why the law is here. So there's a vaday hezek derabim, and especially when the snow starts melting and then it freezes again, then it becomes icy, then it's really dangerous, and then it's really a hezek derabim. Certainly according to the Tashbitz and according to the Magen Avram and according to the Rivash, we could debate it. Back to that old question: is it, on the one hand it's visible, on the other hand, how does seeing it help you in the case of snow or ice?
What about a thin sheet of ice that's not visible?
That's even worse. Yeah, sometimes you do have invisible, you have black ice. But the main argument, the main discussion is clearing regular snow. Before it melted and froze.
States kind of cautious.
On the other hand, Menashe Klein makes a point, which others might make, which is, Seif Kol Seif, it snowed on Shabbos, and most people went about their merry way, and they walked carefully on the snow, and most people, most of the time, are not falling and tripping and getting injured, chas v'shalom. Sometimes if it freezes more, if it gets icier, then they do get more likely to get hurt. Someone was telling me that in Crown Heights, there was once a time where the whole Crown Heights was slippery from Ein Zaytz and Zweiten, and the Rebbe even slipped or almost slipped. And sometimes there's like a matzav where like everyone's sitting and schmoozing. Wow, it's mamash takanas tefashos outside. Most snowstorms, doesn't quite reach that level right away. So the Sata Dvarachal Shiur and Taka, we could sit and clear what exactly is the gather of a hazard. But then he just abruptly concludes and says, "Lafianias daiti la halacha." You could tell a guy to clean the snow in front of the house with hazak harabim, especially dinner the malchusa hazak derabim. So we see it's a hazak, so you can tell a guy to do it even without kablanas. Pashut al din kites. We're taking din kites and we're making it applicable and relevant, and we're applying it to snow. So kol shekem bekablanas. Then he throws in that there's an interesting shita that Rav Yah cited in the Beis Yosef and Simon Zayin, that Amir L'Goy B'Deraisa is only usher if there's no way Yid could possibly do it, like heating up something. There's no possible way to do it.
Did you say that if it falls on Shabbos or even before?
he said different Achronim say different things, and that was Magen Avraham says l'chayr only on Shabbos, but other Achronim say even before Shabbos.
Just now, Allah, he said one way or the other.
That doesn't seem like it. Doesn't seem like he got into that too much. So there's a Rav that says that Amir L'Goy B'Dayrais is only Aser if there's mamish no way to do it. But he says anything in Rosh Hashanah, he says technically you can carry anything in Rosh Hashanah if you really want to. All you have to do is get a bunch of colleagues, a bunch of assistants, and make mechitzas of Bnei Adam, and then you can start carrying. You can create your own mechitzas. So then there's the middle of Nachri never really applies fully in the same way when it comes to Rosh Hashanah. Okay, that's its own, he just throws it in, L'Rav Chadamilsa. Ha'ayla, he says, Maskana is, we can say, tell a guy to clean the snow, mutter l'kuli alma, and if you don't have a guy, then all of a sudden Rabbi Shakhaim backs off. The taka do it yourself, yeshlis yashav hara b'davar, suddenly this is neget, a yid's own Shemir Shabbos. It's very different. So, we're going to start making our own dimyan to compare different cases on Shabbos. To take a shovel would be avada aser, but even by foot, it's not clear. If you do it, I guess we're not going to scream at you, but in lasas ken lachatchila, because there is the rivash who's not 100% clear. But gamle bar hazeka, we're not fully clear on the hazek, so suddenly when it comes back to Yid, all of a sudden he gets very nervous and conservative. But when it comes to a guy, he has no problem whatsoever. And that's his maskana. And like as we said in the beginning, it seems like the Mishnah Halachas, Menashe Klein was Zeicha, that the Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa put it in there in his very, very influential sefer as a psak din. If you look in the Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa and Rabbi Kitzer, he writes the same thing mamish in a few lines. Yesh loyim the daimel akaitz. The shalag is not like an evan gedoyla, which you're not allowed to take away, which the Mishnah Berurah mentioned. The yesh loyimar shekiven shashalag nimtza b'chol makam, because the snow is everywhere, so there's nothing you can do to avoid it. V'ayin shut Mishnah halachas. So that's the idea that Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa went with.
Wasn't he matir by a yid?
You think Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa went even further, seemingly? Yeah, true. Right? What was the lashon? Mekamakim afsher yasa kol ze ayadei nachri. That was the lashon. But he started off by making it sound like you could do it. And that's Rabbi Brian also, we saw, brought this halacha l'maisa. He said you can have a guy clear he's talking about in Karnait. If you look at the Mar Mekaimis, so you can also see how in his unique style he goes through these inyonim. That it's muktzah, yesh lahatir b'makom hezek rabim, he's mitzayin to the Alter Rebbe about the koitz, and the Alter Rebbe about the gechelas. And even according to Rivash, that you should be machmer in something that's very visible, but kan, shekol ha'aretz meleah b'shelek, shiny. Tzarachion, out of Shabbos, the Magen Avraham, by Tzarachion, the Alter Rebbe doesn't get into it. Then he's mitzayin to his brother, Rabbi Brian's brother wrote about Bechlal, the gather of Heter Shvus, b'makom niskei rabim. And he says his brother points to a diuk in Siman Shin Tazayin. There it talks about killing dangerous creatures on Shabbos. Similar related concept of preventing hezek. So the Alter Rebbe brings two shittas, one that's more lenient about killing any dangerous thing you see. There's one that's more machmer. And the Alter Rebbe concludes, Em efshar lo lihishamer mimenu, ulahazir la'acheidim sheyishmenu mimenu. If you have an alternative way of warning everyone and not stepping on them or killing them, then a bal nefesh should be machmer. So from this Alter Rebbe, it sounds like that mashenkin in snow, where you can stand and scream all you want, not helping anybody. So even a bal nefesh shouldn't be machmer. Same concept. Kol shekain, Rabbi Rein says, sheish lahatir shvus the tircha v'uvdin dechoyel b'makim hezek. Just those smaller issues. You're not supposed to do tircha on Shabbos, uvdin dechoyel b'makim hezek. A guy's doing it, should be fine. Then he's mitzayin to the Mishnah Halachas. Now, aside from this Mishnah Halachas, I l'chayr did not find any other direct discussion on this from any of the other Gedolei HaPoskim from that generation. However, in the last couple of years, you do find various discussions touching on this in different kaitzim, different shutim from younger Rabbanim. Interesting to note that I found a macha against this psak in Kovetz Eitz Chaim Baba 45. Came out a few years ago, Tafshanai and Ches. In the letters to the editor, there's a letter signed by a Reb Baruch Eisenberg of Brooklyn, doesn't seem to have any formal position. He writes, so the Isi Lo'er, I saw lately, they're being makel to clean snow on Shabbos. He's from Brooklyn, so I'm assuming he's talking about here. He says, I found out it's all the fault of the Shmir Shabbos Kol Chasa. Because he writes in the new Madura, Perek Chafei, and he quotes the whole Shmir Shabbos Kol Chasa, that you're allowed to clean snow on Shabbos in the street. And he tries to debunk, tries to argue, so what about the kites? What about the din kites? So he says, what's the comparison? Anybody can get easily damaged by a kite, but from snow, what do you mean? Since we're little kids here in New York City, we learn how to walk, how to balance yourself on the snow. This happens all the time. Everyone knows how to walk without falling. So how can you compare it to the kitzim? Those are unusual things. It catches you by surprise. You're going to say, do it with a guy, not with a yid, because Shmir Shabbos Kol Chasa says in the footnotes, Taka, that's an afshir. It should be by a guy in a footnote, because with a yid is zilzal. He says, but the guy is also zilzal. Plus, there's Isser Tircha b'Shabbos, which Rabbi alluded to. There's an Isser Tircha, to just go and do things that involve effort. And he says, the number one thing, when a person has a heart condition, what's the first thing doctors tell people that have a heart condition? Don't shovel the snow. That's the one thing you have to watch out. He says, even the news, he quotes the news, he says, the Balei HaChadashos, the Veter, the Nayas, they all say when it's snowing, by the way, those are the heart problem, don't shovel the snow. So there's an Isser Tircha. Okay, nothing here is mukhrach, but it's just interesting to see that he's attesting to the kula spreading, and he wants to slug it up. Almost finished here. Interestingly, I saw in Shas Tshuvas Sherl and V'darshan, Rabbi Leo Schlesinger is a Rav in Gilo. I quoted him once last year regarding doing a concert, Chazanos and a shul. So in Chelek Ches, came out a few years ago, Simon Chav Gimel, he asks about snow falling in Yerushalayim. Like I said, they get very panicky when snow falls in Yerushalayim, an inch or two. And the trucks, the ones who are going to clear it are Yiddish drivers. So can they clear the snow on Shabbos or not? So the way he's magda the shayla is, are you chayshish to future pikoach nefesh? And he goes off in a totally different direction, trying to go through all the halachas where are we concerned about a future pikoach nefesh? Are we not? Be'ikar with regards to a chayla, and his maskana is lahakal. He says it's better if you can get goyim, but if you don't have, then maybe even you. Now there's also a related question. With this we'll conclude. This is a question related to places like Monsey. In Hamadrich Lahira from New Square last year, there's an article by Shimon Elazar Taiber from Mutz and Monsey about cleaning snow on Shabbos by a guy who's sort of hard to do it the whole year. And the way he describes it is that in these suburban areas, they have this arrangement where he says there's different ways of doing it, but there's companies that offer snow removal services, and you sort of discuss it at the beginning of the year. And then there's two financial arrangements. Either you pay them a flat rate, and then either it snows a lot or a little, they have to come no matter what, or you just agree that they'll show up whenever it snows, then you pay them each time. So, without a shayla of hezek, without just people on their own property, they want to look after their property, clear the snow. Can you do this or not? This shayla taka is a lot more related to these halachas. The whole deal, the whole discussion revolves around these samanim, these halachas. So, first of all, what's the problem? He comes to the conclusion that there's really no problem with cleaning the snow itself. The only problem is taka, the truck. They come with their trucks, with their shovels. He says, you're going to say, who asked you to come with the truck? Come and clean it. Now, obviously, here, especially in the suburbs, no one's coming without a truck. You're going into an agreement. The agreement is, obviously, they're going to come and do it in this particular way. So, the question is, can we be matter? Can we be mekel? So he gets into kveya malachas anachri b'Shabbos, a whole arichas, l'shitas adal tereba. And his maskana is that l'chayr, it's not a problem of kveya malachta b'Shabbos, and I recommend looking it up if you're interested in seeing a practical application of these halachas. He says the main problem is maris ayin, and hitaka's maskana is that sai maris ayin, because most people don't know the exact arrangement, they don't have an understanding of what the financial agreement here is. They might think it is a schir yoim. They don't know that it's done properly. Also, there's b'chlal chil Hashem zilzal b'Shabbos. Suddenly, snow is being cleared on Shabbos. So you have to tell them, if you hire these people, you have to tell them b'feidish not to come on Shabbos. And if they come, you have to scream at them. You have to be meicha. And that's if the guy owns the company. If the yid owns the company, then it's mamish aser. Unless there's a halachic issue, which is not his main point. Also in Kovetz Mesvad L'Chacham Satmar a few years earlier, of Chanech Ashkenazi, Kiryas Yoel, he also has an article on the same in Yanim, and his maskana grada is lahakal. So you have two different Meirei Hira, some being more machmer, some being more mekel, and these types of questions. And in conclusion, we spoke about Amir Lanachri, B'chlal, we mentioned that there's a Lakutta Diburim. The Frierdiker Rebbe says a Maisa with the Alter Rebbe, Shmini Atzeres Tavkuf Mem Zayin, that it fell out on Shabbos, and there was snow on the sukkah, and the Alter Rebbe told the guy, you have to tell the guy, we need to eat in the sukkah, and as long as the snow is there, we can't eat. And people, at the time we mentioned this, because people pointed out that it sounds like Remes B'derech Sipur. That was why we mentioned it then. But part of the discussion, Lubavitch and Rabbi Brain Tak and those Ma'amar Kaimis earlier, what's the problem here? What was the issue with the snow? And we don't have time to get into the different options. Just one final point, I saw Rabbi Nachum Abraham, another Rav from Monsey, writes in Hamar that whatever is mutter with a guy, you have to remember that has nothing to do with a yid. He says he noticed the yid in the Monsey are also starting to shovel their snow on Shabbos on their property. He says that you're getting into major shilas. What exactly the gather of snow is, muktzah, all these questions are actually not so pashut. So it's very important to keep that in mind. The Rabbi Brain himself also, in those same halachas, he started off by saying, when it comes to just interacting with the snow yourself, it's not pashut if you can walk around the snow, it's better than to walk on the snow. This is only specifically, it's important to emphasize, this is only specifically regarding our discussion here especially, was only about asking a guy to clear away the snow in the street because of a hezek. And that's